You are golden, you are good enough, like your fire from within. You're inspired, you inspire us, it's gonna be all good again.
Hello and welcome to the Roar Indie Author Interview Series. I'm your host, Brianna Carter. These podcasts are sponsored by the Mama Knows Not a Podcast and iFrig Publishing. We're back with yet another Roar Indie author for you. This is Anneke. She's coming to us to tell all about her books and her involvement with Roar. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Brianna. This is really exciting. I'm glad we finally get to do this.
I know, me too. So you have a whole series, but before we get into all about your series and such, I want to know what inspired you to be a writer.
Well, actually, interestingly, I was a publisher before I was a writer. And so I've actually been running the business Language Lizard for close to 20 years now. Oh. And our mission is to support schools, libraries, literacy organizations, as well as bilingual families to provide dual language books and to bring a lot of multicultural books, support them in culturally responsive teaching, etc. So we were providing a lot of dual language books, and our niche is that we provide books in over 60 languages. So that's really what we're helping is a lot of the immigrant communities, refugee communities, language learners, etc. And so really, I had been doing that for a long time. And through that work, we would often try to provide lessons and worksheets and things to support the teachers and the families so that they could use a book and maybe not have to create a lesson themselves all around it. And now I myself am not a teacher, but we worked really closely with a lot of teachers. And specifically, there was a professor at Westchester University who I connected with many, many years ago. And she said, I teach all these, and her specialty was teaching basically teaching teachers, right? People who are going to become practicing teachers or people who are back for their master's degree. And she said, a challenge we have is that a lot of teachers are taught to teach, but they're not necessarily or don't necessarily have a lot of experience teaching dual language learners. And so she said, that's what we need to do. We need to help provide some lesson plans to these teachers to help them work and bring culture and figure out how to work to get the dual language learners really participating more in class, et cetera. And she said a lot of them don't have experience on this. So actually, the first book I wrote was together with her as well as some other teachers, and it was not a children's book. It was actually a teacher's manual, which I have here, which was building bridges with bilingual books and multicultural resources. And so the goal there was to help teachers so they don't have to create things all themselves. So it's a very practical manual. So it's all kinds of ideas, specific lesson plans, etc. So that was one thing we did. And then at the same time, we had been providing children's books and providing the resources and the lesson plans. And so most of those children's books I had not been the author of. However, over the years, as I interacted with more teachers and I've always loved children's books. And I used to do some writing and even a little bit of illustrating more as a hobby. It wasn't really my job, but as a hobby, that's kind of how I started it. And the more I talked to teachers, I said, here we have some great ideas that nobody's done yet. And teachers, I go to conferences and they said, we're looking for this type of thing or that type of thing. So in certain instances, I said, well, let me be the one to write that particular one, if an idea really inspired me. So some of the early books we did, for example, I wrote a book. I had noticed with my own kids, for example, learning idioms, right? Everybody learns figurative language idioms. Yeah. And what I had realized when I looked at the books that they were using, they weren't, there was nothing multicultural about them. Like they weren't learning anything about another culture, about another language. They were just learning an idiom. So I thought, let's put together a series of idiom books where it will help dual language learners learn idioms, because those are very difficult things to learn in a second language. So we did idioms, a series of 4 books where there was nature and color and etc. and different themes, animals, etc. And then we provided lesson plans with them, etc. So I wrote one of the books in that series, and other people wrote other books. And so over time, as I've gotten ideas, in addition to the Language Lizard work, providing a lot of the books, I would occasionally write a book as well. So I sort of gradually moved from a hobby into a little bit more.
And I'm just stuck on the 60 languages that you offer. That's pretty, you're underachieving just a little bit there.
I don't speak all those languages. We work with a lot of great translators. But it's very rewarding, because especially things like, lately, I mean, we all know what's going on in Ukraine, for example. So we had a lot of Ukrainian students come, and there really wasn't a lot for them. So we quickly were able to, because we're a pretty small organization, we're able to pivot pretty quickly. So we said, hey, all these kids, we're getting information from teachers. We have Ukrainian students coming in, and we don't have anything. So we quickly started to create a lot of things in Ukrainian. And we're able to help them. And so it's really, it's very rewarding to get the feedback from the teachers and from the students. So I really do love it. And the people we work with are great.
So is there any one specific book that is part of the Roar Indie Author series and the Golden Ticket to Literacy?
Well, actually, when Penny and I first spoke, she had specifically mentioned, she has a very big interest in having multicultural books, of course,
Absolutely.
Which is one reason I loved being part of it, because it's a big mission of ours. But she also, as we talked, she said, yeah, we need some books for the dual language learners, for the speakers of other languages, and specifically, obviously, Spanish being the largest second language in the U.S. after English. We decided, let's put some Spanish books in there, and she really was very supportive of doing that. So we came up with 4 titles of our collection that we thought we would include in that. And we tried to do it so there was sort of a mix of grade levels, a mix of type of books. 2 of them were books I authored, 2 of them were books I did not author. So you want me to tell you what they are?
I would love to know.
Okay.
Tell me.
Okay, so one of them is Amazing, let's see if I can get this in the screen, Amazing Sports from Around the World.
Oh, cool.
And this one, the idea here was to explore some fascinating sports from diverse cultures and locations. And with this book, we really tried to do something that it works for younger kids, but it also works for older kids who may not speak the language very well or read the language very well. So they're learning about yukigassen, snowball fighting, and ostrich racing, and elephant polo. And so the idea here, too, is with all of these books I'm going to show you, actually, there's a QR code in these books. And with that QR code, they can then get a lesson plan, activities, English audio. In this case, there's some videos. So all kinds of things to help either the teachers or the families enjoy the book a little bit more. And so this one was kind of with the idea of it has a high interest, but not, but still simple enough to read for new English language.
Yeah, but
learners.
and also you're kind of putting it all together with having this lesson plan, so that if you're struggling with any component, you can tap in, hear how things are supposed to sound, and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of, it's all medium involved. Yeah, I love that.
And what the teachers actually like is, so we like to put these books in also because the kid who's going to win it is going to take it home and can read it with their family who might not speak English well. But we also love it because from a teacher perspective, if they wanted to use this in a classroom, you start putting a sport in there. So let's say you have a Japanese kid in the class, right? And now they're looking at this book and it's like, oh, wow, a sport from my culture is included in that, or somebody from Mexico, or so, a sport in my culture is included. They're more likely to participate, which is sometimes a challenge when it's a new immigrant student. They tend to be quieter. They start seeing things from their culture in there, and it really makes a big difference in terms of their participation and their willingness to kind of maybe provide even more information about their culture, and then everybody learns something. So
exactly, I love that, the relatability, finding that commonality, something you can identify with that feels familiar. Absolutely, exactly. I love that. Okay, exactly. I know you got more books.
So yes, we have more. Then on that same theme, kind of, we have musical instruments from around the world. Again, looking at some unusual and fun instruments, again, from diverse cultures and locations. And so again, the idea kids will find something from, if not their country, perhaps their part of the world. Also allows them to maybe bring in instruments. There's all kinds of ideas in the lesson plans, right? So different ways to, maybe get them more involved. They can talk about the music in their culture. They can talk about maybe an instrument that wasn't in there, etc. So those are those two books. Then the couple books that I authored that we have in there. One is The Three Little Howlers. Here we go, which is actually an adaptation of the Three Little Pigs book, and it's set in the rainforest of Central America. So the main characters are, not pigs and a wolf. The main characters are howler monkeys and a jaguar. And then as the kids read it, they'll see sort of the flora and fauna and food of that region, is included in the illustration and the text. And then, of course, the lesson plan also builds on that with extension activities around geography and food and other things. And so this one's interesting because this one was, in terms of how I got the idea on this one, was in some of these conferences meeting with teachers, and they said, well, sometimes, like a lot of our books are very, very, multicultural, right? Other cultures, etc. She said, but sometimes we like to just read a story that's familiar, right? Like a Goldilocks and the Three Bears or whatnot. And so I said, that's great, but let's take the familiar story and let's just make a little adaptation to it. So we actually did two. We did also the Three Little Sun Bears, which was with a Siberian tiger, and it was, sun bears and set in Asia. And so again, cool things they can do is if you've now got kids that know Three Little Bears, the Three Little Bears, and now you've got, Three Little Howlers and the Three Little Sun Bears, they can do like Venn diagrams, right? What's similar? What's different? And you can include it in a folktale fables unit, which a lot of teachers have. So that was the idea behind that one. Again, you can see we're trying to get a mix for Penny. And then the fourth one we included is one, this is probably one of our most popular books, is Who Are We? And so this one is actually a very simple book. It uses really simple text, colorful illustrations to help children really sort of understand and appreciate the diversity in our community. So this idea that, hey, we have many differences, maybe different languages, different faiths, different cultures, different family types, but actually when we come together, we can be stronger. And so it's a very simple theme, but again, with the lessons, there's so many lessons you can build around that. I mean, we've even had teachers, even though it's very simple, like literally a line per page, we've had teachers of older kids say, oh, well, I still like to use this in my classroom because it gives me a springboard to talk about a lot of these diversity issues. So that's the four we're starting with now, and we'll see how that goes because we obviously have a lot of other languages we could offer, but we're sort of starting as Penny's, starting out with this. Starting with the Spanish books.
Oh, that's awesome. What does it mean for you to be part and have these 4 books included in the Golden Ticket to Literacy?
Well, I love being part of this. Everything that we've always done is obviously about supporting literacy. I mean, that's become my life, right? Supporting literacy, supporting academic and social development, the fact that she's focusing on multicultural, we can celebrate diversity. It helps build on our mission of improving homeschool connections because kids can bring books back. And so it's really, it really lines up exactly with our mission, right? And we work with a lot of charitable organizations, a lot of them that have projects where they're getting books, giving out books to kids, et cetera. So I will always be involved in if I can, in something that's promoting literacy, that's getting books into the hands of kids, that's getting them excited about reading. In this case, I thought her idea was brilliant, with getting them in vending machines. I mean, you tend to think of a vending machine as junk food, right? Yeah. And this is kind of turning our idea of vending machines around and putting something positive in there. I thought her idea of being able to talk to authors is great because who knows what that's going to inspire in a kid, right?
Absolutely.
And then, you've met Penny, so she's got an infectious energy, right?
Yes.
And so I think getting involved with that, we do get, as a business that has so many languages, we do get a lot of requests, but I just felt, she was really committed, and I really felt that, she's going to be able to get this thing off the ground and really, make a difference as it grows. So I and she's a wonderful person too. I think also what's interesting is, most people in that situation, their idea might stop at this sort of vending machines and getting literacy and opportunities for kids to read. But she actually went sort of one step further and said, I also want to work with independent publishers and independent authors and give them an opportunity to, because I feel like, and I know you are also an author, and I feel like people, we get into this. We don't get into this to make millions of dollars, right? We get into this because we either have a story to tell, we feel that something is missing in the market, and so, but as you know, it's not always easy to get the word out about that. So I think her sort of secondary mission of sort of bringing independent authors and publishers together and supporting each other and providing a way for them to share their story in different ways, I think is really admirable. Actually,
I love that. Yeah.
A lot of forethought she had in that. So I thought that was really amazing.
A lot of it, and I think it's so good to highlight the indie niche that has kind of exploded as well. There are a lot of good authors out there who it's hard to get published mainstream and find the literary agent and all that kind of stuff, but have very compelling tales to tell. And I think it's nice to kind of be able to go in and highlight some of those voices who aren't necessarily going to get airplay because they're not mainstream enough, or you're not a celebrity these days. That's how you get a book published. It seems
exactly. And you're doing it too, with this podcast, you're helping that out. But yes, we don't all want to be, Twitter crazy or whatever to get. I think, it's just nice to find other ways to get our messages across and our books in front of people. So that's great.
I like to have real conversations with real people about real stuff. So this was definitely in my wheelhouse.
Yes.
I think you could offer some really interesting insight to this question, but what advice would you offer an aspiring writer?
I would say, first of all, I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Like people are, sometimes people get very hesitant to try something new. And they might say, well, I didn't study, I didn't major in English, or I'd say just, get out there, start writing your ideas down. If you really want to be an aspiring writer, like as a let's say a strong part-time job, I'd say, find times that you can set aside for yourself to be quiet and write. But I would just say, think about if you have an idea that perhaps hasn't been out there that's near and dear to your heart, find a way to share that idea. But, take the risk of putting yourself out there and sharing your story so other people can comment and provide feedback as well.
I love that. And then tell us a little bit more about your company, Language Lizard, and all the, I know you have 60 languages. So just some of the books that you do offer, the languages that you do have that people can, come to you and find.
Well, I would say at this point, I would say we offer probably all of the main non-English languages spoken in the United States. Now, of course, there's hundreds, so we don't offer them all. But we have a lot of, Arabic is popular, Chinese is popular. But also, on top of that, what might surprise people is book languages like Dari and Pashto, which many people maybe have not even heard of. And those are the main languages spoken in Afghanistan. So what's really interesting about this business is you start to see the impact of what's happening globally on our own business. So, as soon as, the whole situation happened with Afghanistan and there were all kinds of refugees coming in, there was clearly a need for that. And it was very hard to find books in those languages. So it was sort of another example of the Ukrainian. But we've really tried to get all of the main non-English, well, all of our books have English, so they all have English in them and a second language. So, and we'll build on it. We really, as a company, we're not a huge company, and we really do listen to the input of our customers. And so when I know sometimes you'll send something to a company and say, I want to suggest this as an idea, and you figure it's going into some black hole. In our company, it actually does not go into a black hole. And many of our languages, like Haitian Creole, I would say, now we've probably had it for close to 15 years, but I still remember when we didn't have that, and I was at a conference, and a bunch of teachers were coming and saying, hey, I've got communities of Haitian Creole speaking students, and do you have something? And I said, oh, we don't yet. And then we took that input. So obviously we cannot do all of the hundreds of languages, but when we start to hear the same language being asked for multiple times, we'll say, okay, this looks like there could be a need here that, and often people will say, I can't find anything in this language, and I have students speaking it. And the teachers we work with are just phenomenal. I mean, they're so dedicated to responding to the needs and trying to make the kids feel welcome. And a lot of them will build like literacy or I'll say lending libraries where they'll put books of the different languages. And so they may take a book, let's say Three Little Howlers, right? They may put that book and they may read it in their class in English and do some lessons around it, but they'll also have it if they have an Arabic speaking student and a Korean speaking student and a Tamil speaking student, they might have it in those languages as well. The kid can take it home. The kid can read it with their parent, show it to their parent, and even the parents are then like very surprised and feel very grateful that the school is providing literature that allows them to connect with their kid on something that they're doing in school. So I really have just the utmost respect for the teachers that we work with, because it's not an easy job, especially teaching in general is not an easy job, but now you're teaching students who don't necessarily speak English well, and yet they really try so hard to get those kids involved and learning. And there's been a lot of research. I mean, actually, one of the reasons I started this company was because there had been all this research, not only about the importance of literacy in school success, which we all know about, but also just the fact that literacy and reading is what's important, more important than the language that they're reading in. So, and they actually said if kids could build a strong foundation in their first language, which we'd call L1, it will help them in developing their second language, L2. And so, because there's so many similarities, phonemic awareness, cognates, whatnot. And so there's this theory that, okay, it's really important for the kids to read with their parents when they're young in their home language. But what I realized early on when I started this company is, well, that's great in theory, but for a lot of these kids, there are no books in their language, right? So we can say in theory read, but if their parents don't speak English and they're not old enough to read many of the books themselves, there just wasn't reading happening. And so this way, it just really provided them the opportunity to have books to read with their kids. And it's very gratifying to see.
That is awesome. Now, can parents go to your website and purchase books on their own, or is it only through school systems?
No, we've made it pretty easy for anybody. So, so we have a pretty easy to use shopping cart. It's www.languagelizard.com. That's lizard is one Z. So we do, although we do work a lot with schools and libraries, we also do work with a lot of bilingual families as well.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your journey to being an author or language lizard?
I think the only thing I would say is it's more a general thought, is that as phones take up so much of our life, and I know it's such a draw with kids to just be on that phone and be on that screen, like just the more you can do to get them in front of a book is so great. And also the more you can get them talking to people, particularly if it's people who are different than themselves. So if your kid has a new student from, Central America or from Ukraine or whatnot, like really encourage them to try to go talk to that person. Maybe you bring them a book, that's even better, but just to get to know kids, because I feel like, or to get to know each other, because I just feel like, as you look at society, it just seems like more and more people are not having the conversations and not learning about the other people. They're too focused on their screens. So the more we can get our kids away from that and encourage them to talk to other people and read, I think the better.
Excellent point. Google does not have all the answers.
Exactly.
Let's just say that.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Anneke, for your time. This is Anneke Forzani from Language Lizard. You can check out her books at languagelizard.com. And until next time, I hope everybody's enjoying the journey of reading and writing.
You don't have to read between